Welcome guys, welcome to Storefront's weekly meetings. So this way we are clubbing the effort of customer journey revamp in our FG stream and our weekly meeting. That is why you guys are invited along with the pod members. So today first we'll discuss what the subflow, and that is the title I thought about in the last. And I hello sir. चल
कौन ऑफिस है
वरुण है वरुण से हाय
चार्जर कॉल करूं क्या? Hi guys.
लैपटॉप चार्ज या फोन चार्ज
हाँ, laptop. Man, good to see you guys. आदर्श शुक्ला कौन से स्टेडियम का बैकग्राउंड है?
ये
एमसीजी अच्छा, बढ़िया. अंकित सूद का तो गोवा स्टेडियम का बैकग्राउंड है. चलो you guys क्या है? Good to see you guys and good to see Anupam and Himanshu in the office also.
Cool, sir. Cool. On that note, let's start what the subflow. Over to you, Young.
Okay.
ये हम ब्राउन बैग में क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं?
ये वॉल प्रूफिंग मीटिंग है. ब्राउन बैग में होने के बाद करते हैं.
Okay, so let's start with the topic what the subflow. So basically we'll cover four main things in this session. One is Subflow basics. What was the tech debt that we created? What how it became a problem to us, and what solution we are approaching to solve that. Okay, yeah, the Subflow basics. So basically, if you go by definition, so Subflow is a combination of widgets, which is a part of a group page. We'll come later to group page and what is a group page. But Subflow, you can say that Subflow is basically a combination of widgets and a combination of actions. And those actions are available to the widgets through which we can write our business logics and other logics. Okay. So what is the one thing that a Subflow must have? That it should be independent and reusable. Often we, if you see the code, that sometimes we forget that they should remain independent and reusable, but we should always focus on this thing. So currently we have several subflows in our code. One is checkout subflow, if you have seen cart subflow. Okay. And another example is like how it can be independent and reusable. So one is like address can be a subflow, which can be part of customer request journey as well as user profile. But currently it's not implemented like that as of now. So we'll come to that later, that how it created a problem. Now some related entities related to subflow. So you must have heard about the term standard page. So a standard page is basically just a page which is used to independent page which is used to show widgets provided by Ryan. So that's just a standard page. Now come after a standard page, there come a group page. So like there's a journey, like customer request journey is a journey, and it has several group pages. For now, we just have only one group page in our code, that is customer request journey. But in the optimal way, every journey has some different steps, and for each step we should have a different group page. Okay, and that's why the definition that a group page is a part of is a step of a journey which has some subflows as a part of it. So the subflows which we created earlier can be reused in different group pages. A group page have an array of subflows through which they handle the actions of their that a group page can have. Okay, yeah, journey we have already discussed. So a journey is basically a list of steps through which a user can go through. Now one thing is like how would we know that a group page is a part of a journey, right? So every group page has one journey ID in its config through which it identifies that it belongs to this journey. So we have one single journey ID for our customer request journey. If you will ever see the response of initiate journey, you will find a journey config ID in the response of that. Yeah, next is session data. So like you know that every page has a data store in it, in which we store the page specific data in a data store. But what about the journey? Like how different group pages will communicate with each other, right, in a journey? So to solve that, the session data was introduced to maintain a sync between all the group pages and maintain a common storage for all the group pages through which they can where they can store their common data. Similarly, if you had seen in customer request journey, we have data like city key, category key, and some other packages data which we keep on in the session data. Session data also helped us to achieve our aim of like shared state. If we'll come to that later, what is shared state? But shared state helps us to update the UI of different group pages without actually going to that page. They just update the session data and update the UI at that page. For example, if you will update something in the checkout page, right? You update some package or something, then it will directly update the UI at the cart level. So whenever you go back to cart, the UI will always be updated. There will be no loader or something to update the UI. Now, there is a simple formula between group page and standard page and session data, that group page is a combination of standard page and session data. So in a group page plays a part of standard page, but it has the power of acquiring the session data. Okay.
Hey, just 1 minute, Yukank, how is a group page different from a normal page, like a cart page or a summary page? Same चीज होता है ना?
No, like group page and cart page and this checkout page are all group pages, right? But अभी क्या होता है कि वो दोनों एक ही group page से power होते हैं, which is customer request journey.
तो journey customer request journey is a group page, you are saying?
Yeah. अगर आप
Isn't it a journey?
ये गलत बोले ना युगांश, तो वो दोनों अलग अलग ग्रुप्स ही तो हैं, ग्रुप पेज ही तो है दोनों अलग अलग, अभी कार्ट और चेकआउट.
नहीं मैं बताता हूँ ना.
Front end.
अच्छा, फ्रंट एंड साइड पे. ओके गॉट इट.
फ्रंट एंड ही इज प्योरली टॉकिंग अबाउट फ्रंट एंड. अभी तक आपने पर्सनली बहुत काफी इंडेक्स किया बैक एंड पे, दैट्स व्हाई ही इज ब्रिंगिंग द प्योर कस्टमर.
अच्छा, बैक एंड पे तो वो दो अलग अलग ग्रुप में, बट फ्रंट एंड पे वो एक ही ग्रुप पेज के अंदर लोड हो रहे होंगे.
यस.
जब भी आप कहीं भी जाते हो, कार्ट पेज से या सब्सक्रिप्शन पे जाते हो, सब्सक्रिप्शन चेकआउट पे जाते हो, you just call one method, navigate to next group, right? So it will always open a single route for that is customer request route for customer request journey. Now in this you send the type of action or something which further calls get next group to our backend, which brings the like what should be open next, right? But every time this customer request journey is opened, and it has a list of subflows. If you'll see, yeah, it has a list of subflows which empowers it. Now, each subflow is never used in just one group page. The cart subflow will use only 2 subflows, right? Checkout group page will just use checkout subflow. But these all will be part of group page every time a new group page is opened. So like whenever you go first visit cart, a customer request journey group is opened, and then you visit subscription, a new page will open. Then you visit checkout, a new page will open, right? So each subflow will be part of every step you are opening in the customer request journey.
मेरे को clear नहीं हुआ.
So Antika, I'll explain. So हम power क्या करते हैं? And our entire journey is powered through backend, right? That means I can add and remove pages through my backend without actually having. What we require is कि हम journey को change कर पाएं. We should be able to add and remove pages and remove groups without actually making any kind of front end effort on it, right? So now the thing is that that means there needs to be one endpoint. There needs to be one page on the front end which is capable of powering all those groups which we can define at the backend, right? So that group page is our customer request journey group page, which is, you can say, some kind of a God page.
तो अभी God page क्या है ऐप में?
हाँ, तो God page है हमारी ऐप में कि उसके पास सारे सबफ्लोस की पावर है, right? That means कि अगर कल को मैं उसके अंदर एक और जाके ग्रुप एक ऐड कर दूं, तो मेरा ये नहीं होगा कि उस पेज वो पेज वो चला नहीं पाएगा या वो उसको एग्जीक्यूट नहीं कर पाएगा.
Okay.
Right. So for that purpose only, we require कि एक ही ग्रुप पे जैसा होना चाहिए which is able to power each and individual step. क्योंकि अगर हम individual बनाते हैं, right? कार्ट के चेकआउट के इनके अगर मैं individual बनाने लग जाऊं, तो उसमें फिर होगा क्या कि for example if checkout suddenly tomorrow starts using something of जो कार्ट पिच, जो हमारी कार्ट पिच सबफ्लो होती है बैकएंड में, right? Category pitch, which sends all this kinds of geo information, geolocation data and everything, basically geo proofing data and everything. अगर कल को उनको हुआ कि यार मुझे ये स्ट्रिप भी दिखानी है, so now that strip is powered through a different subflow.
Harshit, English. Brahan is also.
Sorry. Oh, so yeah. If we get a request tomorrow that we need to show geo-proofing information in the checkout page as well, right? So in the backend, its data source is different. It is being powered through the category page subflow. But if we created different group pages for cart and say, let's say checkout, now checkout group page will only include subflows related to checkout right now, because there was no other requirement as of now. And then if somebody tries to send in that widget, which is being powered through category pitch, it will not be shown, or it will show a crash in the app. Why? Because the subflow is not yet supported by the checkout group page. You understand me?
Yes.
That's why we created a God page for the entire customer request journey, so that any kind of step, any kind of subflow which we have defined in the backend can be powered easily through just backend changes.
Got it. So basically, जब app में page देखते हैं, that is not group page. Group page is maybe एक defined page, combination of pages or combination of page and widgets, जैसे भी हम backend में करना चाहते हैं.
So backend के हमारे groups जो होते हैं, they define individual entities, individual steps, unique steps which we need to take, and they translate to a single God page.
Got it.
Which is running those capabilities.
Got it. ठीक है.
Kulu, continue. If you guys have question, I understand this is the first walkthrough for even for seasoned backend developers. So in case you have question, just type them in the chat. We'll address them later.
So basically, yeah, this is a flow graph that at what layer we have in our journey. So first is journey. Every journey has a group page, like a group page A, group page B. Now group page can have different subflows, like group page has subflow A, subflow B, group page B has subflow C, D, E, and every subflow has a collection of widgets within them. So this is basically a overlook on the journey and group pages. So now the tag debt created. Yeah. So now the when checkout.
Just one question. Just can you please one step back?
Go back.
Just one step back. So the group page has subflows. Like the group page can't have a widget directly.
No. So group page will have a list of subflows, which will empower the widgets.
Okay. The hierarchy is kind of fixed. So it's like this is the from a widget. Okay, this is just to give the hierarchy of how this page has been organized. We are not going into the data flow here.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that how actually it works. So suppose you call initiate journey. There comes a list of widgets, right, in the layout.
Yep.
So now every widget has a subflow ID within them.
Okay.
So when the group page, when the customer request journey is opened, so that widget will check that if that's the ID, subflow ID it has, will it map with any of the subflows the group page is having, right? So if it matches with any subflow, so it will be having access to all the actions defined in that subflow.
Okay. Got it. Sure. Yeah. So this widget does not necessarily mean like the horizontal widget. It can be anything. It can be just inside, say for instance, some button on the top left corner. That can also be a widget.
Yeah, widgets are basically the widgets empowered by which are provided by Orion.
Any small UI component basically.
Any small UI component. Got it.
Yugang, one question here. You said if there is no subflow, for example, there is a group page. Okay.
Yeah.
There is no subflow in it. Okay. Now, can I create widgets in that? Because ideally I could, because it's a standard page plus session data.
I think widgets will be created, but
you cannot
perform any action.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Action can be action can also be performed if I define the on emit action in the group page
On
also.
the standard page you can define, but on the group page you have to map it to some subflow. Then only.
Okay.
So if yeah, you will have access to these emit action outputs, right? Emit actions, but they will be emitted only through the subflows.
Okay. They can't be used directly by the widgets.
Yeah. So how no widgets cannot use this directly, I think.
Okay.
This is possible in standard page props. When you're defining a normal page, na, you can use the emit action directly because that is the construct. In group pages, all the actions lie in Subflow and they are bubbled up to the journey, bubbled up to the level of the journey group page.
Exposes an actions map, right, which the widgets can call, because they are not linked to any kind of subflow. That means we call them as generic widgets. But in group pages, you do not have any kind of actions map. There is no prop which exists of actions. What here exists, as you see in line number 27, actions, this does not exist in a group page. So how the construct of group page is created is that every kind of widget, every kind of action which needs to be taken place in a group page should be powered by a subflow. There cannot be generic, there can be generic widgets present in a group page, but no actions can be taken onto them unless it's linked to a subflow.
Got it. Got it.
And a group page must have a journey ID because a group page doesn't exist without a journey.
Okay. Like how does one question more, like how does journey ID works as an identifier? Like like can you give one example for the same?
Okay, so whenever you start your journey, right, whenever you initiate your journey, you pass one journey ID to it. In your journey configs, you have an ID. Now it's at the Orion level how they are handling this, that how they identify that this group page belongs to that particular journey. Orion identifies it through that particular ID.
Got it. Got it.
Basically, Mukul, whenever you fetch session data, right, you are getting session data in all the kinds of utilities, right? So how Orion is actually handling it is it's checking the journey ID being passed to the group page. And then they maintain a map of journey ID to the specific session data.
Okay. Got it.
So that means if for different journeys, if you have different journey IDs, they will get different sets of session data.
Understood. That's why the journey ID is required for identifying.
That is why the journey ID is required by the group page, because the session data is not being powered at the group page level, because as we know, there is a single group page, right? We have a God level group page. So we cannot create mapping to the group page only. So we create it to the journey ID.
Got it. Parishit, yeah.
So is there any more question? Okay.
We haven't covered subscribe Subflow in detail. Yugang, can you also shed some light on it? I think a lot of people will be confused like me about what are subscribe Subflows.
Okay, so like in Subflows, there's one thing that Subflows do not belong to a journey, right? Because if you will go to the definition of subscribe Subflow, it's an extension of Subflow specific to a journey. So suppose you have mentioned an action in a Subflow that to update particular widget, but to update a particular session data. But the Subflow is reusable and independent, as I have mentioned earlier. It can be used in different journeys which can have different session data. Now, how would the Subflow know that which session data to be updated? Because they might have different journeys, might have different session data, different keys. So Subflow is not aware of that. And to make it independent, we introduce a different thing, that is subscribe Subflow. Now, every journey can have its subscribe Subflow, right? Where you can define your output actions. We call them output actions. So basically, whenever you come to an action of a Subflow, you emit an output action from that Subflow to the subscribe Subflow, where you will write the logic, the code for that particular journey, for that to update a particular session, to update the session data of a particular journey, right? So subscribe Subflow also belong to a particular journey. If you will see in customer request journey, yeah. So the subflows which you're seeing, these all are subscribe Subflows, which are basically extension of CJ category page, which is also a subflow in the main Subflow directory. Now they all have different output actions, like open page output, where they have written their logic to update the session data or whatever they're doing to update the UI or something, right? So I hope it's clear that what a subscribe Subflow do and what a normal Subflow do. One main difference between both of them is, like, subscribe Subflow have the access to session data, whereas Subflow doesn't have access to session data.
And why is that, Yugang? why doesn't a Subflow has access to Subflow session data?
Because a subflow doesn't belong to a journey, right?
Yes.
A subflow is independent. Independent and reusable are both strong terms which are related to a subflow.
So you're saying ki whenever I want to interact, whenever an action happens and I want something to do with the journey, I need to go to subscribe Subflow. I cannot handle it.
Yeah.
Correct?
If you like, if your aim is to update session data of that particular journey, you cannot handle it at the subflow level. But if it's just a normal thing, or you just want to update the data store or something, then
Okay.
you can, or you are just not
What
doing.
is the role of journey actions then? I don't see any use of journey actions then. What are the role they playing? If I can access session data, why I'm not able to do it? Why do I even need journey actions? And why do I need to go to journey to do some actions then?
Okay, so suppose now, you want to have a group page level action data, right?
So can I update any other subflow also from a subscribe subflow? Let's say if I have a use case of let's say I'm in cart and something in the pricing footer needs to change, which is let's say another subflow. Can I do that through subscribe subflow?
Can you repeat the question?
Let's say if I'm in the cart subflow,
Okay.
and there was an action which is update pricing.
Okay.
And there are two other subflows which also need to reflect this pricing.
Okay.
Which is one at the top, which is category page, and assume that there is the pricing footer is also a different subflow. Can I update other subflows through? How do I update other subflows then?
Okay. Suppose you have a common action, right? Which you can call through different subflows, right? So instead of defining all that logic in different subflows, you should have a common place where you can put that, which is specific to a particular group page level, right?
Achha, so you're saying ki the group page actions are actually the common actions which are applicable for all the subflows.
Yeah, they can be emitted through all the subflows.
Okay.
Which the group page is having.
But how do I change other subflow? Should I be allowed to change other subflows? The question is, let's start with that. Should I be allowed to change other subflows? Should a subflow be allowed to change other subflow?
Like I cannot relate with exactly the question that how a subflow will change another subflow. But if you're saying that
what Anupam is asking is, Yugang, that can I change the UI data or anything of another
you can change
subflow
that
widget from inside different subflow widget?
Yeah, you can change that with the help of shared state.
With the help of shared state. But
Forget shared state. Forget shared state. Since you have not introduced shared state to any of the people here, forget shared state. With the given constraints you have told us, can I change the UI data of another widget which belongs to another subflow from inside the subscribed subflow, from inside the subscribed subflow of another subflow? There is subflow A, there is subflow B, right? I have an action in subscribed subflow A, and I want to change the UI data of a widget which belongs to subflow B. Can I change it through subscribed subflow?
No, you cannot change that from subscribed subflow, but you can have a different action at a journey level which can do that, and which you can call through that subscribed subflow.
Achha, so if I have, let's say subflow wants to change something in, so there is a long tail. Does this means I need to go to subscribe subflow, then I need to go to journey, then the response will happen, then whatever happens, then that will be propagated back to subflows, then the UI will change.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So in order to change something in another subflow, there is no straight way. Whatever journey you are part of, I need to go to that journey level, then the journey will change. I cannot do it directly.
Yeah.
Okay.
In short, अगर मैं थोड़ा simply बोलूँ तो lower hierarchy entities basically publish their changes to the upper hierarchy things, and then they can republish to other lower hierarchy things that, hey, this change has happened here. If you want to change something in you because of this change, then you can do something like this. First, the change propagates upwards, and then it repropagates downwards to everyone. So basically, you are publishing your change to everyone in the whole journey hierarchy.
Yeah.
Correct. You can move it.
Okay. So now what was the tag type created? So like when checkout was created, address and slot were not the part of checkout subflow. Okay. So also address and slot pages were not even subflows. Address and slot pages were standard pages, which were already being used at other places as well. Like in address page was used in profile, and similarly the address page was used with checkout. So because it was not a group page, it was a standard page which was having its individual actions. So we can right. So due to that, a problem was created. Let's discuss what was that problem. So if we want to open address and slot page as an independent step of a journey, like at the currently they are opened as a bottom sheet, but if we want to open them as a full page as a step of journey, at step of customer journey, so we cannot do that. Why? Because our customer request journey is empowered through subflows, and because address and slot pages were not having any subflows, weren't able to do that. Like one other issue was because they do not have access to the journey level data. So we have to manually pass the data to them, and whatever the action they do, we have to manually pass the result back to our customer request journey, which was also a cumbersome task for us. So we have to find a solution for it. So now what was the solution? The solution was simple, that we will create address and slot subflows to handle all the actions. Now this subflow will be independent and reusable, which we will use in our customer request journey to open address and slot as an individual page, and we'll reuse these subflows in our independent pages, the pages which are being opened in the bottom sheets. So like I told, address and slot pages were open in bottom sheet as standard pages. So now we'll convert them into group pages and reuse these subflows in them. So basically slot and address now will be powered through two different group pages, one in the checkout and one in the as a part of individual step journey. But their subflow, their actions will remain same in the subflow at the subflow level. The benefit of this will be
let's wait. Let's talk about the problem first. Let's see are people able to relate to it or not, or is the problem very clear or not? You can repeat the problem again.
Okay. So the problem is the main problem was we were not able to open address and slot data, because we now we are having different use, as we are in scaling, we have different use cases for our journeys, right? And one use case was if we want to open address and slot page as a standalone step of the customer request journey. So because they were not empowered through subflows, we are not able to do that currently. So that was the main the problem we were having.
I have a question. Like when we are trying to make address and both slots as separate group pages, now slots has a dependency that it needs the lat long or address some address to fetch the slots and all that, right?
Yeah.
So how do we resolve that dependency that it earlier had on address?
So I think the dependency will remain same for now. For slots to be opened, the address should be there, and we would pass the address information to the slot page, to slot group page.
So the data validation stays the same, but they are now separate group pages.
Yeah, and now because as we know that group pages are also having at the backend level, group pages have validations we have validation for each group, for card, for subscription, for checkout. Similarly, we'll help for this slot and address also, depending on the use case and conditions.
Got it.
Yeah, so two questions here. One, in entire discussion, you were saying that address and subflow will be two different subflows. Sorry, address and slot will be two different subflows. But right now you're saying they will also be different group pages. So, kya honge finally? Will they be group pages or will they be only subflows?
Okay, so one was like initially told, we are empowering every step through customer request journey, which is our GOT page, right? So one thing is that we want to empower slot page through that group page only. But on the other side, the slot page also opened through checkout through a different page, right? And and all its logic and is handled through in the checkout at the checkout level. The bottom sheet closes and the result is passed to checkout, which handle all the cases, which update the draft and all the things. So to handle both of these requirements, so what we thought that we'll keep that functionality there only at the standard page level, but to reuse the subflow, we'll convert it into a group page.
So one problem that will come here is the validator thing that Sparsh was talking about. I think it was Sparsh or Rohan. So that validator thing is at a group level. But if you just make address and subflows different within the check, so let's say your group is checkout. Okay, it has 3 subflows. One is show the pricing summary and all. Second is address subflow. Third is slot subflow. So right now we have that dependency or basically validation part only at group page. We don't have that at subflow level. So if you render that group page, you have to render all the subflows. That means you need to render address subflow also, slot subflow also. But here we have a dependency that if this subflow data is there, for example, if address data is there, then only slots can come. So if we are saying them that there are different subflows, then we also need to have subflow dependency. If we have data of subflow 1 within our group, then only we can render subflow 2, which is not there currently. It is only there at group level. You can only say if we have checkout, if we have, let's say, card data, then only open checkout, or if we have subscription data, then only open checkout, but that you can't do at subflow level.
So I think currently this will be handled by the checkout only. That how will it open the address bottom sheet, and will it enable to open slots bottom sheet? If I've got your question right, that how will handle the validation at the bottom sheet level.
Correct. So abhi we like matlab, just like now there are if checks, if this data is there, then show this. That same kind of if checks will be there on subflow level also, rather than having a proper dependency layer. First this subflow should always be there, then this subflow should come.
That is a navigation problem that will
Anupam, is it about like changing in the backend, or is it about the can't changes? Like can't we have to make it as a different subflow. Then basically we can use the subflow at any place, like be it part of customer journey or be it part of some other journey or some other.
The idea is that only the subflow that we have should be extractable and used as part of any journey page, and that is and one of the samples and use case we have, that is where the new group page of address page or slot page lies. You have a group page of address, you have a group page of slot, which will be, if needed for a particular use case, will be rendered in the journey, else it will be part of subflow. It is not like we're changing the existing implementation and taking it out and moving it to group page. It is not like that. There are use cases where we need a group page to be part of the journey. That is where the new group page will lie.
Got it. Yeah.
Is that clear?
I was thinking old wale ko bhi change kare. So
old one will get changed. It will get distributed in subflow, but how it is rendered doesn't get changed. It will still be part of checkout. Yugang will explain better in the next slide. Please go ahead, Yugang.
Yeah. So, so currently what we are doing at the checkout level, whenever bottom we click on the select slot or select address, we open a new route, right? To which we pass the init data, and that route is opened as a bottom sheet where user interacts, and that bottom sheet closes and pass the result back to checkout. Similar thing will happen now also. But what is the difference? The difference that will happen is, so now when the bottom sheet is opened, the page which was opened were having individual actions, right? They were not that page was not powered through subflow. Now what we'll do, we will empower that that page through subflow, which will also be used in the customer request journey step of address and slot.
Subflow or subscribe subflow?
Subscribe subflow.
Subscribe subflow, yeah.
Correct. Is the solution clear to all? Let's take a vote. If not, we'll repeat. Let's take a vote. We have talked about subflow a lot. Obviously, I am biased because I have seen the presentation, and so let's take a vote. Who were able to understand what the problem was? How much time we have? We have 10 minutes. Let's take the vote. Plus, just type 1 or 0 in the chat.
Meanwhile, एक question है जो आप कह रहे थे ना, customer request journey is the God page, right? That starts initiate some action. So for every new use case, just like some people have to just enter from WhatsApp, we as product have to enter from some other flow, it will sort of create another journey, which is our God page, right? Does that make sense?
No, Antika. So every kind of group that needs to be catered in the customer request journey, and what we say customer request journey, pre-request journey, right? Which leads to a request generation. So every kind of group, every kind of subflow which needs to be powered for a user request creation will be powered through this God page.
And this has a unique journey ID, this God page.
A journey ID changes, right? Journey ID changes
changes.
based on your entries, right?
Huh.
So we have different entries for different dimensions. So journey ID changes for based on those dimensions.
Okay, फिर God page की existence का point क्या है?
God page के existence का point ये है कि still subflow same use हो रहे हैं, right? For example, अगर मेरा एक use case आया, like we have a use case where for the package details one.
English.
Sorry. So we have a use case where our first page instead of being cart needs to be package details if the SPL has a single list, has a single element, which is being used for VC currently. Right? So now they are using all the same groups. For example, they are using the same checkout group, they are using the same subscription group, they are using the same payment page, they are using the same address, slots, everything. Only their first group is changing, right?
Right.
So if I start creating different God pages for different use cases, then again, the entire point of being able to control navigation and groups through backend changes, because every time I want to add some kind of new journey, I would have to add another group page, but no actual implementation is being changed, right? Because the checkout page will still work the same, the address page will still work the same, the payment page will still work the same. Only the UI representation of the first page is changing. Instead of showing a cart page, I'm showing a package details page.
Got it. So what will be the valid use case to create a new God page?
Data source. So for example, if we want to power a journey through post request, where the data source is not draft order, but you have different kinds of data sources, right? Or I want to power a journey through provider, which is another of the use case where now provider is being able to add packages for the user and send it as an estimation, right?
Right.
So for that case, your data source is changing. That means now this is not a pre-request service. This is not a pre-request journey. It becomes something else. The data source has changed. It's not based on draft order.
Got it.
Right. So then you will create your another God page.
Yeah. Understood.
So I have a question here. So address, जैसे हमने subflow बना, so if we create an address subflow, it is dependent on the group page, that is the checkout page, for example, right? So now I have also a use case where it will be used in profile, so there is no group page in profile there.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So so Aryan's question was that as well. I'll clear this doubt as well. So the problem is that when we defined at the very beginning that we have a group page and we have a standard page, right?
Yeah.
Now, first, let's look at the very atomic problem that what we are trying to do is we are trying to segregate address and subflow so that it can be reusable anywhere, right? Forget group pages, forget standard pages. I mean, every use case, they should be able to reusable. What reusable? They are widgets, basically, right? When we say something is reusable, that means I want the entire screen to be there. Their actions, business logic can differ, but the UI representation will still be the same. Right. So now, exactly. So now you have, when we say these kinds of dependencies which Aryan talked about, right? Like that slot and address have dependencies on each other, which is very pertaining to the customer request journey. And they might not be the same dependencies in profile.
Right.
So what I can do is, we have kept these checks on two levels, right? The parent group page, which opens these subflows. Now it can be an individual group page for these subflows, or it can be the God group page, which is currently being powered through our customer request journey group page, right? So we have kept this kinds of checks, this dependency checks to the group page level only. And now, since profile does not entail these kinds of checks, does not actually need these kinds of dependencies, so we can create another group page for the profile. For the profile page, we can create another group page for the address page, which is reusing the same subscribe, subscribe subflow. You got my point straight? Because these checks will be placed at the group page level.
So
These
basically
dependencies
now to
at the group page level. The subscribed subflow has no idea, has no regards about any kind of dependencies. It is the only job of the subscribed subflow is to perform their actions.
yeah, I got that point. So so some things also might change it in the UI part also, right? So for example, currently what we are having is in the UI of address page on checkout. So we have a selection logic altogether. So we show selection bullets and radio buttons are
Yeah.
shown and a confirm button is shown. Okay.
Yeah.
But in profile, so there is nothing as radio button and confirm button. So there is no action to be performed. Only you can just edit or add or delete your addresses.
Yeah. So what your UI is saying, the UI element is changing is that from the radio buttons, it's just a list, right?
Yeah.
That can be solved via very generic branching, because that again is a widget prop value, right? So since I have different use cases at the backend, I exactly know for which use case I'm actually triggering the widgets for this screen. I can change it back there that do not show any kind of radio button. As for the actions, so that's what I said, that since only actions can differ, right? So if I am creating another profile group page, and as you saw that any kind of page actions, we emit it to the page only, right?
Okay.
So I emit all these actions to the page level, and that page is deciding what to do with these actions. The most basic actions, for example, when I'm clicking edit, what is that representing? I just need to open the map page for this address with the pre-selected agendas, right?
Right.
That still remains the same for both the pages, for both the flows. What changes it? The action which is being performed on the proceed click, right?
Right.
So what you can do is you can emit those actions from your subscribed subflow to the group page level, so that if there are multiple use cases, multiple flows which is using these subscribed subflow, they can handle out their in each and own individual implementations there.
So basically, if I get this correct, so the bottom line is key for every subflow that we are creating. So suppose if we are creating address subflow, if we are creating a slot subflow, and if we want to use them independently somewhere else,
yes.
So we need to use them via a group page then. So even if I'm opening up address page from profile, so I need to open a group page first.
Exactly.
And then that group page will incorporate address into it.
Exactly.
Right?
Because that is the limitation put aside by Orion, because Orion says the standard page cannot have any kind of subflows, right? A standard page cannot power any kind of subflows. Only a group page can power subflows.
Okay.
For you, it will not change actually anything, because for you, you will still be just giving it a route, some initial data, some init data, and it's still opening in terms of a bottom sheet or an individual page, whatever way you want. It does not actually change anything for you. What it changes is that we have now localized, we have commoned out all that logic, all that actions of a standard page into a subflow. That's it. So that it can be powered as a standard page, which was already being used, and as a step as well of the journey, any journey.
As a standard page, what do you mean by as a standard page? Like
standard page, which basically means that no session data. Again, let's in terms of that, no session data. That means it's not a journey step. It is just an individual step which is being taken place. For example, in profile, right? It is not a journey that a user is taking. It's just a step. It's just a UI representation.
Okay, so,
I want to show the address list.
No, I got confused between standard. So you said standard page. So but it is basically a group page that is being opened, right?
Yeah, it's acting as a standard page. What I'm saying is that it's still acting as a standard page.
Standalone page. We can
standalone page. Let's say standalone page. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So you can also take example of subscription. Subscription has many.
Is a good example.
Subscription is used as a standalone page where you can purchase the subscription directly, and subscription is also been used as a group page in customer journey where actions are performed differently. For example, you are updating the draft order via subscription selection, and in standalone page, whenever you are selecting a subscription, you can purchase it directly. So these some of these actions are different, but some of the actions on the page, like selection of the plan, how you are toggling your, like
FAQs widget or other actions, they are common for both the pages. So now all the common actions, they are shared via this subflow. So we have created a subflow. So the same subflow is used in this standalone page, and the same subflow is used in customer journey group page. And whatever actions that are requiring session data of customer journey, for example, draft order or something else, those actions are emitted via this subflow, and customer journey is like the subscribe subflow in the customer journey is handling those actions and performing whatever actions it has to perform. And other, like the common whatever so the same code we don't have to rewrite for both the use cases via this subflow basically.
Yeah, cool, got it.
So what we are actually trying to prevent here is code duplication, because that has been the actual type that has been created to us is actually the code duplications. Because what that entails is that if somewhere in one use case, if somebody goes, a developer goes and changes some kind of behavior, and maybe that behavior needed to be reflected in other pages, or maybe that behavior did not need it to be reflected in other pages. So
Yeah.
we need an exact way of standardizing, because method reusing is one of the approaches, right? Which is one of the basic approaches of reusing a code, that you reuse the method. But how many times actually a developer goes into a method and actually sees how many places that method is being used, if it's not a utility method, right? You gotta ask yourself.
Cool.
Are there more doubts on Yuvang? Check the chat. If there are more doubts, clear them.
Feel free to ask. It took us It took us an entire revamp to understand subflows. So we understand that a presentation will not solve it for you guys. So feel free to ask questions.
Yes.
One thing, I'll prepare the diagram and I'll share.
Any more questions? It can be through backend subflows. It can be on front-end subflows. If you want to understand what is the difference between backend and front-end subflows.
Yes, I mean, yeah, alag-alag hota hai kya?
Yeah. So what Yugang told is in terms of a front-end subflow, right? So यहाँ पे आएगा, यहाँ पे exact you will know why we have actually created subscribed and normal subflows. Because in backend, what subflow represents is you can say a owner of a widget. Owner in terms of he will get the data, he will create the UI. Simple enough. Two responsibilities of a backend subflow is getting the data for a widget, creating the UI for that widget, and any actions that widget performs, right? These three responsibilities. And on the front end, we needed the same construct so that we can replicate the behavior of the backend. So that is an actual subflow, right? Which is just an owner, which is representing who is the owner of this widget. But now, since this kind of like, I can change easily based on use cases and pages, what kind of data is being sent and what actions need to be performed. That means we needed some way in front end as well, so that we are able to use the same owner, but different actions. That is where subscribed subflow came from. Really. That subscribed subflow is using the same owner widgets, but for some different actions, for some different business logic.
Cool. We do understand the naming is not very clear.
Yeah.
We do understand. The problem is in the naming, honestly. We will think about if we can simplify it in the long run. An entity which says it is a group in the backend, being part of the same system, and an entity which is a group page in the front end being part of the same system, and if they're behaving entirely different, yes, it does create confusion. We do understand that. Before you guys mention that, we'll just take that as a feedback and we'll try to improve upon it. In terms of naming, pure naming convention has created a lot of chaos here for a lot of folks.
It was very incremental in the beginning. It was actually, we kept at the backend as flow and subflow. But then when the Orion was creating, they created as group page and subgroups. Then it was subflow, flow and group. Then it was group page and group. So it was a very incremental kind of development because the time constraint was very high. But yes, the naming is definitely something to be catered, so that since more and more developers are coming in on this project, we need to have a naming system which is clear to all.
In case we don't have questions, we'll part ways here, guys. Thanks, Yugang. Where is Yugang? Yugang has left, I guess.
No, I'm here.
Thanks.
Diagram बनाने चला गया वो.
Thanks, Yugang. Thanks for enlightening us with Subflow. I don't know how much percentage that you might all have grabbed it, but I'll share the video on the channel. Do use it as the base whenever you want to revise what the Subflow. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Steven. Thanks, Steven.